What happens when one question shatters a facade and silences a room? In a Capitol hearing, a single truth from Emily Harper exposed secrets, toppled defenses, and left Sarah Mitchell speechless. Stay tuned. This is the moment integrity demanded an answer, and silence spoke loudest. Stick around and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for the rest of this story. When Emily Harper challenged Sarah Mitchell about a viral clip showing vaping and inappropriate behavior at a Beetlejuice show, the hearing chamber didn't merely stir, it exploded. A controversy rooted in personal missteps escalated into a stark revelation of ethical breaches, misused taxpayer money, and concealed documents buried in Capitol archives. Within 5 minutes, careers crumbled. Countless viewers saw Mitchell exit without a word, as power dynamics tilted under the steady resolve of one woman. Harper didn't yell or dramatize. She posed a single query. What words did Emily utter that made silence outweigh any defense? Keep watching. This tale demands your full attention. The red light flared on. A hush clamped. Room 216 like a locked safe. No whispers, no rustling, only taut anticipation. Cameras were already capturing as Emily Harper stepped into view, her aura slicing the tension like a razor. Dressed in crisp black, poised and deliberate, she carried a lone leather folder marked Ethics. 48 pages. No aids, no theatrics, just intent as she approached the central chair. The quiet thickened. She didn't acknowledge the audience. She had no need. Her composure wasn't meek. It was a smoldering force, restrained and poised. The chair groaned as she settled, and every lens zeroed in on her face, resolute, unyielding, primed for battle. 4 minutes later, the door slammed open, jarring the frame. Sarah Mitchell sauntered in, sunglasses perched, gum snapping as if she ruled the place. Her PR crew shadowed her, murmuring taglines and strategies. She offered no excuse for her tardiness. Instead, she flashed a wave at the cameras, as if strutting a premiere's red carpet. Her grin stayed fixed as she took her seat. She reclined with an assurance that seemed staged, a show for a crowd she believed she could still sway. Yet the disparity was glaring. Harper, a pillar of quiet strength. Mitchell, a shimmer without substance. The chamber noticed. The nation noticed. Harper didn't glance her way. She faced the microphone and spoke with precision. This isn't about personal choices. It's about the trust of the public. When your behavior reaches millions, privacy vanishes. Not when you've pledged to serve, not to amuse. She paused, her finger resting on the folder. So let's pose the true question. Does scandal remain scandal if you dress it up as flair? The room froze, and the cameras rolled on. Just as the stillness in room 216 seemed ready to shatter under unspoken truths, Emily Harper leaned in. No flair, no raised tone, just a conviction honed to a fine edge. She slid a flash drive into the console. The chamber's lights dimmed deliberately, but what followed was no act. Let the video tell the story, she stated calmly, for truth requires no script. The screen flared to life, stuttering briefly before settling on a muted surveillance clip, time-stamped 9:41 p.m., Seattle, Washington. Mitchell's name appeared in the corner, alongside unedited theater security footage, September 10th, 2023. There was no retreat. The grainy feed showed red velvet seats under soft theater glow. A young usher lingered by the aisle. Then, unmistakably, Sarah Mitchell appeared, hair perfect, legs crossed, phone glowing. She sat beside her companion. Moments later, the mood shifted. A vape pen emerged. She tilted back, puffing vapor into the shadows, laughing too loudly at lines others ignored. Then came the contact, hands wandering, hers and his. prompting uneasy shifts from nearby patrons. A woman ahead turned, lips pursed. A father covered his child's eyes, yet Mitchell pressed on, uncaring or unaware. She dismissed the usher with a rude gesture on his second approach, and when her date's hand slipped beneath her skirt, the hearing room held its breath. The quiet stung, not just from the visuals, but from months of deception. Mitchell had refuted it, labeled it a partisan attack, insisted she was targeted by monitoring and cancel culture. But now, no excuses remained, just a stark, unfiltered reality. Harper didn't avert her gaze from the screen, nor did she revel. Instead, she let the clip's final moments hang, where Mitchell chuckled while leaving the theater, tossing her hair, heedless or dismissive of her ejection. Emily faced the committee with a calm that wasn't frailty but discipline. Her voice, when it resumed, was soft, yet bore the weight of long-suppressed truth rising. "This isn't about an evening at the theater. It's about undermining public faith," she declared. "This body has disciplined members for lesser offenses, misused letterhead, overly bold tweets. But this was a brazen display of hubris. And worse, without that footage, we'd have been urged to dismiss it, excuse it, move forward." She paused, her gaze sweeping her peers. "But how do we proceed if standards bend for the person in the seat?" Then, edging forward, she addressed not only the committee, but the millions tuned in live. No woman in this nation is unaware of the consequences she'd face for the same actions, especially if she were poor, a teacher, or a black mother from Illinois. She let the reality sink in. So don't claim this is about leniency. It's about shielding privilege cloaked in denial, and I won't stay silent while others face rules. Some of you evade. Every camera remained fixed on her. Mitchell fidgeted in her chair, but the room was Harper's now, and the illusion, the narrative, lay in pieces. The footage dissolved to black, but the silence it left was louder than any news ticker. Eyes shifted to Sarah Mitchell, lenses poised, fingers ready over keyboards. The nation paused in that fleeting moment before a response. Then she laughed. Not a soft chuckle, but a bold, mocking laugh that echoed through the chamber like a misplaced taunt. She leaned to her mic, a smirk etched across her face, and spoke with brazen ease. "So that's the deal. A woman unwinds at a show, and it's a national emergency?" She shrugged, unruffled. "Last I checked, being human isn't illegal. Voters don't want stone statues in office. They want someone relatable, someone who's lived, someone unafraid to enjoy life after hours." She scanned the room, as if expecting a nod of agreement. "Let's not act like we're all perfect," she added, her voice sharpening. "Americans are tired of fake politicians pretending they're flawless. I'm genuine. I show up unfiltered, and that scares the establishment." Her tone grew firm. "Maybe that's why I'm being paraded through this spectacle. Not for what I did, but for refusing your rules." Her stance was unmistakable. No apologies, only defiance. Emily Harper didn't reply immediately. She let Mitchell's words drift away, like fumes clearing in a courtroom, heavy with denial. Then, slowly, she leaned to her mic, not to compete in volume, but to restore clarity. Her voice was firm, rooted, each word striking like a judge's hammer. "Congresswoman Mitchell," she said, "you weren't summoned here for enjoying yourself. You're here for betraying public trust." Her eyes stayed on Mitchell. "Don't conflate oversight with oppression. When you occupy that seat, when you vow to serve the people, you can't dismiss your actions as off-duty antics. There's no downtime when taxpayers fund you and children see you." She paused, letting the truth settle among the committee's stern faces. "Being genuine isn't the issue. Using that as a cloak for recklessness, that's the risk. You didn't merely vape in a theater, ma'am. You disrespected those seated behind you, the ushers doing their jobs, the kids watching nearby. And now, you're disrespecting every woman in this country who's been told to uphold twice the grace for half the regard. Her voice softened, but gained precision. Don't mistake charm for integrity. Don't equate exposure with accountability. And please, don't confuse scrutiny with victimhood. She clasped her hands over the folder again. The people who elected us didn't choose drama. They chose duty. And duty demands more than a title. It demands standards. The room fell silent again, but this time it wasn't expectant. It was attentive. The silence was dense, not seeking calm, but bracing for a fracture. Emily Harper held her gaze. Her voice, when it returned, was clear, composed, and piercing in its truth. "This isn't about condemning you as a woman, Sarah," she began, her tone sharp, yet steady as granite. "It's about the harm caused when someone in your role forgets who they also represent." She didn't amplify her voice. Her truth carried the weight. You might believe your actions reflect only on you, but they don't. When you treat public office like a personal spotlight, when you brush off conduct that disrespects those who entrusted you with authority, it doesn't just tarnish your reputation, it tarnishes ours. Every woman who's had to strive twice as hard for half the respect. She turned slightly, addressing the entire chamber. Each time you turn yourself into a spectacle, they point to it and say, "See, that's what happens when a woman leads." And then opportunities close, silently, one by one. Sarah Mitchell's smile stiffened, but she didn't yield. She leaned to her mic, her voice now edged with defensiveness. "So I'm the issue," she said, disbelief threading her tone. "Because I don't conceal who I am. Because I refuse to fake a persona to match your version of proper. That's not advancement. That's restraint. Women like us should be free to show our true selves. I don't think women must mimic men to govern. I think we should stop apologizing for who we are." She sat taller, eyes fierce. "You can preach about dignity, but I'm finished with rules meant to box us in. I don't owe anyone a flawless act. My voters didn't demand that. They wanted someone authentic, and that's me, whether you approve or not." Emily listened without interrupting. But when she spoke again, the room leaned closer, drawn by an almost magnetic pull. "You wield authenticity like a shield," she said, her voice low but unwavering. "But authenticity doesn't justify carelessness. Being true doesn't exempt you from accountability. We all want to be ourselves, Sarah, but some of us know that being ourselves doesn't permit disrespecting those we serve." She paused, her eyes locking with Mitchell's, not with fury, but with piercing clarity. "You earned a place at this table, one countless women never neared. Yet instead of honoring that duty, you used it to excuse behavior that would have cost a teacher her job, a nurse her license, a server a manager's wrath." Her voice tightened, not with anger, but with a deeper, heavier weight. "You're not facing consequences for being a woman. You're being held accountable for forgetting what public service means." Then, slowly, each word a quiet verdict, she added, "Freedom doesn't erase boundaries, and leadership doesn't exempt you from rules. It begins with you." The chamber didn't explode. It didn't need to. Emily Harper's work wasn't loud. It was precise. For the first time that day, Mitchell lacked a quip, a grin, an exit. But just as it seemed Emily had quieted every space she entered, as her words stood like truth carved in stone, Sarah Mitchell drew her last card. Not reason, not proof, but diversion. She pulled her phone from a folder, raised it like a prop in a staged drama, and spoke with a spark of victory. "Want to discuss respect, Congresswoman Harper?" she said, her voice laced with feigned calm. "Perhaps you'd like to hear what your peers say about you behind closed doors." Without pause, Mitchell tapped her screen. The chamber's speakers caught the signal, and a male voice, distinct, familiar, filled the space. It was rough, private, chillingly casual. "Look, Emily's a dynamo. Too intense, too black, too outspoken, too self-assured. She forgets her place sometimes." The voice chuckled, dry and dismissive, as if her hearing it was unthinkable. "I mean, she wields race like it's her calling card." A sharp gasp swept the chamber. No name was uttered, but all recognized the speaker. Representative James Walton, a senior ethics subcommittee member. That morning, he'd gripped Emily's hand with a polished grin, saying, "You're a rising star." Now he was exposed, reducing her to stereotypes, spoken not in rage, but in ease, whispered where he thought it safe. That made it worse. Cameras zoomed in, jaws dropped. One aide let out an audible breath. But Emily didn't react at once. She didn't have to. She sat motionless, like a tempest poised to strike. Her eyes didn't widen. Her posture didn't shift. She seemed like someone who'd long anticipated this, who'd lived under its shadow too long to be shocked. Then she spoke, composed, icy, authoritative. "Madame Chair," she said, eyes bypassing Mitchell, "I move to summon Representative James Walton as a material witness. I also request the full recording be entered into the public record." Her voice didn't waver. It sliced. No one responded immediately. The room was stunned, not by procedure, but by the gravity of truth breaking free. A clerk's pen clattered. Two members stared at their notes, as if wishing to vanish. Reporters in the gallery raced to capture every moment without blinking. The air hummed, not with tech, but with reckoning. Outside, the rotunda buzzed with voices. Protesters, gathered since dawn, shouted, some lauding Emily's bravery, others defending Walton with cries of honor and false outrage. Hashtags surged on Twitter. "Nah, Walton tapes." "Harper deserves better." Inside, Emily sat steady, not from peace, but from years of learning to appear calm in spaces that resisted her presence. Her silence was defiance. It declared, "This is where you thought I'd falter. Instead, I'm waiting for you to face the truth." The air was still thick from the recording's fallout when Emily Harper acted again, quietly, purposefully, with the steady hands of someone not just proving a point, but delivering justice. "Let's move beyond opinions to facts," she said, unfolding a sealed document bearing the House Ethics Committee's embossed seal. Her tone stayed even. It didn't need to rise. The paper itself spoke volumes. "This is an unreleased internal report," she continued, lifting the document for the cameras. "It details financial records linked to a budget line called Community Engagement. Funds earmarked for public forums, town halls. In short, funds meant to serve Washington's 3rd District." She passed a copy across the table. But these records reveal that on September 10th, 2023, those funds covered a theater ticket, a private car, a $412 dinner, and vague event logistics charges. The same night Congresswoman Mitchell was removed from Beetlejuice. No shouts, no accusations, just a silence, taut and ready to snap. "The signatures on these approvals," Harper added, "match Congresswoman Mitchell's handwriting, confirmed by committee staff and cross-checked with 3 prior expense reports. There's no clerical mistake. There's no missing context. The records are clear." She looked up, not at Mitchell, but into the live broadcast's lens. "This shows more than bad judgment. It's misuse of public funds under the guise of service." Across the room, Mitchell tensed. The words landed like a chill gust. She grabbed her mic with shaking fingers, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It's being twisted," she said swiftly, her voice thinner. Staff reviews these expenses. I sign what they provide. It was mislabeled. A simple error. Her nervous laugh faded quickly. I've always been open with my district. This wasn't a personal spree. It was a filing mistake. It happens. But the room's expressions told another story. Committee members avoided her gaze. An aide whispered to a colleague, sliding a tablet over. A junior representative from Ohio removed his glasses slowly, staring at the documents as if they'd reshaped the space. And at the center, Emily Harper sat unmoved, not from lack of feeling, but from years of staying composed while questioned, doubted, dismissed. Now, she didn't need to shout. She had the truth, and it spoke loudly enough. After hours of clashes, documents, and public unraveling, the hearing had grown beyond a confrontation. It mirrored the nation itself, its rifts, its principles, its scars. Then, in an unscripted, unrehearsable moment, Emily Harper shifted the room's energy, not by raising her voice, but by digging deeper. "I want to share something," she said, her voice quieter yet more commanding than anything prior. Her eyes swept the panel, resting calmly on Mitchell. "Not about laws, tickets, or receipts. About my mother." The room, already hushed, seemed to contract further. "She worked at a small theater in Springfield, Illinois," Harper went on. "She poured drinks at intermissions, scraped gum from seats, mended costumes when staff ran low. She held no power, no title, but her principles were etched into her core. Her voice didn't shake. It bore weight without embellishment, like a memory forged into steel. "One night," she said, "a black couple arrived for a musical. They'd bought front-row seats weeks earlier, but the manager claimed those seats were double-booked and told them to move to the back." She paused. It wasn't an error. It was a signal. Harper glanced down briefly, then up. My mother witnessed it. She faced two paths: stay silent to keep her job, or speak out and risk all. The words lingered like mist. She spoke out. She called it wrong. She urged the manager to fix it. No shouting, no cursing. Just, they deserve what they paid for. Harper's voice grew softer. She was fired on the spot. No notice, no final pay. The chamber's silence shifted from tense to sacred. That night, she came home, tears in her eyes, Harper said. But she looked me in the face and said something I'll always carry. "No one will ever face worse for speaking truth than I did, and I'd do it again." Harper eased back, letting her story's weight land. "That's the home that raised me, one where truth carried a cost, where standing up often meant standing alone. That's why I'm in Congress, not for fame, not for spotlight, but to honor a woman who lost everything for refusing to stay silent when silence was simpler. For a long moment, nothing stirred. No one moved. Even Mitchell stayed quiet. But slowly, she leaned forward, eyes narrowing, shoulders rigid. Then she gripped her mic and spoke, her tone firm but trembling slightly. "You're not alone in coming from hardship, Emily," she said. "I know what it's like to struggle. I didn't grow up easy either. My family often lost power. I worked in a bar at 15, wiping tables, serving rowdy crowds, enduring remarks I'll never repeat. No one shielded me. I shielded myself." Her voice sharpened. "So don't say I don't understand struggle." She sat straighter. "I didn't have a mother teaching me to fight with words. I learned to fight with silence, with survival. I made it through the only way I knew, and I didn't weaponize that pain. I built a life from it. I smiled through it. I brought people joy. I gave them something better than what I got." She added, with a sharp nod, "That's why I chose joy. Maybe that's why I chose to entertain. Because constant anger isn't the only way to resist." The moment hung, raw, exposed. But Harper didn't waver. She waited until Mitchell finished completely. then spoke with a clarity that resonated like a chime. "I've never been angry just to be angry," she said evenly. "I'm angry because too many believe silence is safer, because we're told smiling through wrong makes us resilient. It doesn't. It makes us complicit." Her voice lifted, not in volume, but in intent. "We both know what it's like to scrape by. We both know being underestimated. But surviving isn't the same as standing. Surviving is what the world imposes. Standing is what you offer the world." Harper leaned closer, her eyes fixed on Mitchell's. "You chose to be liked. I chose to be heard. You chose to keep the room at ease. I chose to show the room its flaws." Her words landed like soft thunder. "We're both shaped by struggle, but only one of us decided that struggle should end with us." The silence that followed wasn't theatrical. It was real. It was two lives splitting in real time, with all watching. And for the first time that day, it wasn't the evidence, footage, or scandal that gripped the room. It was truth. Raw, lived, unequal, undeniable. No one applauded. None needed to. The contrast spoke volumes. One woman had climbed to power and tried to charm her way through it. The other had borne injustice's weight and walked into its blaze. And somehow, she stood firm. Just as the room began to grasp the depth of what had unfolded, the clash of fire and ice between two lives, a voice cut through from the chamber's right. Steady, flat, and calculated. "Madame Chair," the man said, rising. It was Representative Charles Matherson, third-ranking Republican on the House Ethics Committee. Gray hair, flag pin, a voice that had hushed rooms for decades. "I believe we've entertained this inquiry long enough." The room stirred. Cameras swiveled. Matherson wasn't loud, but all knew his tactic. The classic Washington move to halt things before they grew too real. "With respect," he continued, "this hearing has veered into personal territory. Congresswoman Harper's remarks, though moving, have drifted from procedure into areas frankly irrelevant to this investigation's core." He adjusted his papers with practiced ease. "We're here to assess conduct, not character attacks disguised as narratives." For a moment, his words hung like a premature gavel. All eyes turned to Emily, expecting her to protest, defend, or snap. But she did something far more potent. She smiled, not broadly, not forced, but a quiet, knowing smile, the kind born from being underestimated once too often. She reached deliberately into the leather folder that had already dismantled the hearing with receipts, signatures, and memory. Then, with utter calm, she drew a single sheet, thick, cream-colored, stamped in gold at the top. The camera zoomed. The room held its breath. "I value the gentleman's focus on decorum," Harper said, her voice firm as iron. "But since we're back to procedure, I'd like to submit a document accepted by the House Integrity Commission at 8 a.m. today." She raised it for the record. "This is a formal proposal, vetted and approved, recommending disciplinary action against Congresswoman Mitchell for misusing public funds and violating ethics under Rule 6.14b. A sound broke through. Not yells, but a raw, collective gasp. Reporters surged forward, phones aloft. Aides froze mid-sentence. It was power shifting. "This document contains all evidence discussed today," Harper continued. "Receipts, timelines, a sworn affidavit from a former aide. It's not conjecture, it's proven. And it needs no interpretation, only courage." For the first time, Mitchell didn't speak. She didn't reach for her mic. She didn't toss her hair or grin for the cameras. She stared ahead, lips tight, jaw so tense it pulsed at her cheek. A woman realizing she was no longer the predator. Cameras caught it all. Defiance fading, reality sinking like cold steel in her chest, confidence draining as the single sheet passed from Harper's hand to the chair. Matherson sat without a word. Outside, the press gallery quaked. Hashtags erupted. Hashtag Harper strikes back. Hashtag discipline demanded. Hashtag Mitchell under oath. Inside, the room transformed. Stage, battlefield, confessional, where the system was forced to listen. Emily sat steady, not cautious, but controlled. This wasn't vengeance, it was duty. She didn't shout because the evidence had spoken and the nation had heard. The chair cleared her throat, adjusting her glasses with the poise of someone who'd seen an uncrossable line breached. "Let the record note," she said carefully, "that a formal disciplinary proposal has been submitted and verified as admissible. The committee will pause for review." The words were formal, but the tremor was personal. This wasn't just about Sarah Mitchell anymore. It was about everyone who thought charisma could outrun accountability, about systems that shielded chaos for its volume over truth. Now, under oath, on camera, that illusion crumbled live. And Emily, she sat, breathing, watching the debris settle. For hours, she'd faced smirks, interruptions, condescension masked as order. She'd been called too angry, too emotional, too self-focused. She'd been urged to dim her fire for others' comfort. Now, she'd answered the only way that mattered, with evidence, precision, and grace that didn't bend under insult. The hearing wasn't done, but the story was. In a room built to mute her, Emily Harper had done the unstoppable. She rewrote the narrative, and this time, it wouldn't be undone. The room had changed, not just in mood, but in equilibrium, like a wire snapping under someone's weight. All saw it unfold live. Mitchell sat rigid, arms crossed so tightly it seemed defensive, not defiant. Her jaw, once quick with comebacks, was locked. Her bravado had ebbed, replaced by a chill closer to fear. The Integrity Commission's document lay on the table, its gold seal glinting like a caution. But Emily Harper no longer glanced at it. She didn't need to. That chapter was written, signed, sealed, and recorded. Now only one question remained, not of proof or politics, but of conscience. Emily sat composed, eyes steady, fixed on Mitchell across the aisle. The chamber, buzzing with reaction moments ago, grew still again, not by order, but by instinct. All sensed an ending. Then, Emily leaned to her mic one final time. Her voice didn't rise or perform. It was even intimate, like truth whispered through a locked door, undeniable to the listener beyond. "Congresswoman Mitchell," she said softly, "do you believe Americans deserve integrity that needs no defense?" It wasn't a snare, it was a reflection. No accusation colored her tone, no anger, just a question that wouldn't yield. For long seconds, Mitchell didn't stir. Her eyes flicked, not to Harper, but to the cameras, the chair, the aide's scribbling hands, suddenly too loud. Her lips parted, as if to speak, but no sound came. Then she stood. No excuse, no protest, no backward glance. She pushed her chair aside, rose, and walked out. The leather seat creaked faintly behind her. Her heels clicked on the hardwood, less defiant, more like withdrawal. Cameras tracked her, straining for her face, but she kept it angled, unreadable. The gallery watched in utter silence. Outside, hallway lights gleamed off polished floors. Mitchell strode quickly, eyes forward, security hurrying to keep pace. No press queries, no words, just a door shutting behind her as the chamber stayed frozen in her absence. Inside, Emily remained still. She didn't look to the cameras or signal for cheers. She eased back, hands folded, and spoke into the mic, softly, clearly, as if reading truth etched above. "That silence," she said, "was the clearest response we heard today. No one spoke, not the chair, aides, or press. In that moment, all grasped what had occurred. It wasn't a flourish, it was a moral judgment, and it came not from a vote or ruling, but from a woman's exit when truth loomed too tall to challenge. It came from the space Emily Harper carved, not with noise, but with courage. She didn't gloat or smile. She inhaled slowly, exhaled through her nose, grounding herself, as she always did when speaking truth, in a room that rewarded lies. For Emily knew power never exits quietly. It collapses or flees. And this was flight. The chair broke the silence, her voice unsteady despite her effort at calm. Let the record show Congresswoman Mitchell has left without responding. She glanced at Harper, and for the first time, her eyes held no political calculation, just respect. Reporters typed headlines. Cameramen whispered into headsets. Aides traded looks that said, "This is bigger than a hearing." Yet Emily said no more. She didn't need to. Her question echoed, quiet and potent, across Capitol Hill, into newsrooms, living rooms, airwaves. Do Americans deserve integrity that needs no defense? In the ensuing silence, the nation had answered. So had Sarah Mitchell. By leaving, by dodging the question, by letting absence speak louder than excuses. And Emily, she stayed seated, steady, present. For that's what leadership does. It doesn't flee when the spotlight burns. It doesn't fold when truth grows heavy. It stands, even alone. And in that moment, millions across the country saw it and glimpsed courage that doesn't flinch, doesn't shout, but waits for truth to work, softly, unyieldingly. Beyond room 216, the silence cloaking Emily Harper's final words began to spread, first in murmurs, then in surges. What began within walls now swept the nation like a gale shattering stained glass. It started with one tweet, a clip of Mitchell's exit, captioned, "She didn't just leave a hearing, she abandoned accountability." Shared 27,000 times in an hour, it hit 1,000,010. Hashtags followed. Burlesque Mitchell, sharp, biting. Harper for truth, bold, resolute. On TikTok, users wove Harper's question, "Do people deserve integrity that needs no defense?" into clips of protests and burning agreements. Teens in school halls whispered it like a creed. Veterans under YouTube replays wrote, "At last, a leader who didn't waver." Twitter threads dissected each frame. One likened Mitchell's departure to Nixon's last wave. Another paired Harper's calm with Nina Simone's Mississippi Goddamn. The platform buckled under the load. On cable, anchors leaned in, wary of missing history. CNN's 7 p.m. panel opened with "Silence as Confession." Did Mitchell end her career? MSNBC's Joy. Reed faced the camera. This wasn't a takedown. It was a legal, moral triumph. Emily Harper didn't chase claps. She chased accountability. Even Fox couldn't sidestep it. A commentator grumbled, "If she campaigns with this momentum, Republicans better hope she stays local." But the buzz wasn't just pundits. It pulsed in homes, subway stops, classrooms, barbershops, cities, and towns. The hearing sparked something ancient, beyond partisanship. Justice, long deferred, now voiced. In Raleigh, North Carolina, retired teachers held an impromptu town hall. "We're told to wait," one said into the mic, "but that hearing ended my patience. I want laws." In Kansas City, veterans filled a VFW post, drafting a call for a national officials conduct code. One stood, "I served 30 years, and I've never seen bravery like hers." Party doesn't matter. When someone faces power unblinking, you follow. In Atlanta, the state capitol saw its biggest civic turnout in years. Citizens lined marble steps with signs, "Not your spotlight, our house. Ethics isn't optional," she spoke. "We're ready." Through it all, Emily Harper stayed silent. No tweets, no live streams. She declined every interview. That night, Her office released one statement. Enough excuses have been heard. Let the record and silence speak. Her quiet amplified the moment, for the public saw what the press was only grasping. Emily hadn't just exposed Mitchell. She'd unmasked the system shielding her, loopholes, lax standards, charisma excused as quirks. The nation was done with the show. On Capitol Hill, aides raced to gauge the fallout. Lawmakers pored over transcripts, hoping speed might alter them. By dawn, 3 bipartisan sponsors backed a revived House Integrity Act, dormant since 2015. Now it had a face, not just Harper's, but every citizen unseen while outrage dominated headlines. The weary teacher, the overbilled nurse, the transit worker watching from break rooms, everyone who'd braced for disappointment, until now. In Des Moines, a councilman switched parties publicly. In New Orleans, college students drafted a state ethics proposal echoing Harper's federal guidelines. High school civics classes replayed the hearing for debates. In an Oregon suburb, a student rose. That's accountability. That's what power should dread. Meanwhile, Mitchell's office issued a curt statement. Congresswoman Mitchell stands by her service and anticipates continued work for her constituents. But the nation had moved on. The moment had passed, and she'd walked out of it. Emily stayed quiet until late, when her Instagram posted one image, no caption, just her at room 216's center, papers around, eyes steady, mic live. It went viral in minutes. A comment read, "She didn't raise her voice, she raised the standard." And in that instant, from state houses to schoolyards to social media, the shift felt quiet, but lasting. Outside the Capitol, news vans droned. Satellite dishes turned like steel blooms toward history's steps. Reporters wielded mics like fishing rods, seeking quotable suits or badges. Inside marble halls, aides rewrote releases. Editors cut sound bites. A CNN producer hissed into an earpiece, "We need Harper now." But Emily Harper wasn't heading for them. She ignored the cameras, not the prime-time panels or polished anchor desks, eager to parse her words. She passed the press throng without slowing, head slightly bowed, not retreating, but resolute. No flashes, no crowd wave, just a steady step elsewhere. She had another destination. Down the hall, in a small, windowless room, 13 Illinois law students waited. Unlisted in schedules or press releases, they'd driven over 20 hours to see the hearing. Some waited hours, only to be diverted to an overflow room. They'd been promised nothing. No access, no attention. Yet they got a front-row view of something cameras couldn't fully catch. Now, Emily Harper walked toward them. Entering, she met no fanfare, just quiet awe. She didn't demand silence. It came naturally. She approached the long wooden table, set her folder down, and met each student's gaze, one by one. No podium, no divide, just presence. She nodded to the staffer with the laptop. "Stream it." The feed started. No music, no logos, just her voice. Calm, worn from the day, but deeply rooted. "I could have been on CNN tonight," she said plainly. "They're outside, waiting. I could have done the routine, waved, said the right lines." She paused. "But this moment isn't for that." The students sat riveted, eyes wide, grappling with the fact that the woman who just delivered a national reckoning chose them over networks. "One of you," she continued, "wrote me a note this morning before the hearing. You said, 'We came to see history. We didn't expect to feel part of it.'" Her voice softened. "You were part of it. You are part of it." A young woman at the table's end wiped tears. A young man nodded, clutching his notebook's edge. "You'll enter a field that demands all of you," Harper went on. "Your time, your sanity, your identity. You'll be told to conform, play safe, choose ease over truth. And when you speak truth in a room that's never welcomed it, don't expect cheers." She leaned in, hands flat on the table. They'll call you emotional, say you're too personal, urge you to hush, but they'll never say you were wrong. The livestream chat erupted. Viewers nationwide typed like praying. She didn't need media. She was the message. This is leadership. This is law. This is legacy. But Harper ignored it. She spoke to the room, not the screen. Representing people, she continued, isn't a stage. It's not a show. It's a vow. It's a weight carried publicly, judged privately, and too often betrayed by those who mistake power for fame. She drew a steady breath, heavy with every attack, smirk, and call to soften she'd face today. Then she offered her final words. Not a soundbite, not a speech, but a pledge. Being a representative isn't about visibility. It's about your actions when visible. It's not a performance. It's an oath. And today, those who broke it were seen, clearly, fully. The room didn't burst. It didn't need to. A student exhaled shakily. Another shut her notebook, whispering, "I'll never forget this." And Emily stepped back. No grand exit, no final look. She needed no validation. She'd done her purpose. The stream ended silently. No outro, no credits, just one image. The American flag waving softly in dusk over the Capitol dome. Quiet, distant, yet watching. A symbol not of what is, but what could be if people like Emily Harper kept entering rooms where truth was long denied, and stayed. For 9 seconds. Yet as the stream faded and night cloaked the Capitol dome, the real impact sank deeper. Into the hearts of aides, clerks, guards, interns, janitors who'd watched from history's margins, where it's usually only overheard. The first lesson hit like a cold snap. Integrity isn't a lofty ideal. It's a daily choice, made by titleless people who bear the fallout when leaders deceive. They'd seen a lawmaker sign false vouchers, then blame errors, knowing a nameless aide would pay. They'd seen another reject the media circus to share her moment with students, offering only idealism. In that contrast, every staffer saw their own fork, become silent enablers of spectacle or steadfast keepers of truth. A Capitol accountant, re-watching the hearing on a storeroom screen, quietly flagged half a reimbursement spreadsheet for audit, unprompted. A young scheduler, recalling orders to mislabel a donor dinner as outreach, emailed the ethics council at 2 a.m. A guard, whose badge never gave him a committee voice, told his partner, "The oath starts somewhere. Might as well be us." They saw now that paperwork wasn't just forms, it was latent evidence. Every signature, from mileage to catering, could one day enter a hearing like a drawn blade. That truth felt daunting, but freeing, for integrity was now theirs to wield. The second lesson spread in whispers, on elevator rides, and late copy runs. Silence can outshine spin, but only if someone stays calm to let it resonate. They'd seen Emily Harper pose one clear question and leave the gap empty, letting the lack of an answer roar louder than countless charges. Staffers, trained to plug every pause with talking points, now practiced patience, letting silence reveal deceit like film in clear water. A communications aide printed the transcript, marking only ellipses, where Mitchell's words should have been. She pinned it above her desk, a reminder that truth can grow in absence. By morning, interns shared screenshots of Harper's restraint, like memes captioned, "Masterclass in poise and step back, let facts strike." Managers noticed, and without orders, briefings began ending early, urging staff to reflect, not react. The building's rhythm slowed, but talks deepened. That hush became credibility's new measure. Integrity, they decided, was not just what you said, but what you let the room hear when you stopped. The third lesson surged with the raw force of every ignored worker who'd seen a boss dodge blame. Justice delayed is only denied if no one saves proof. They'd watched Harper's folder become a courtroom, built from months of unseen work by aides whose names wouldn't grace headlines. Within were late-night analyst emails, clerk-flagged discrepancies, volunteer notes from campaign ledgers. Their quiet labor had forged accountability's frame, and the hearing showed it could fell even the boldest act. In Hill break rooms, assistants who once shredded drafts at controversy's hint now archived them, knowing today's evidence could be tomorrow's truth. A legislative aide pulled old whistleblower rules from archives, updating a neglected bulletin board's hotline. The third-floor copier jammed twice as staffers duplicated expense reports, just in case. This wasn't revolt. It was the careful weaving of democracy's safety net. They saw every keystroke could steady justice when winds shook. The fourth lesson flowed through halls like a sacred scent. Representation is holy work, not showmanship, and those who treat it as theater abandon their voters. Maintenance crews, long used to hearing politicians hone sound bites between elevator chimes, had thought authenticity a myth. Yet here was a representative who skipped prime time to address unsung students. That act reshaped the pecking order overnight. A janitor, pausing mid-mop to watch the stream, told her daughter, "True leaders speak to those who can't lift them higher." Word spread, and by lunch, staff rosters swelled with mentorship program requests from clerks, cafeteria staff, security trainees never imagining policy roles. HR scrambled, but supervisors agreed, as morale soared from one authentic act. The invisible ceiling they'd faced cracked, and the light felt radical. They knew proximity to power shouldn't dim their worth. Duty, not drama, was the guide, and in that truth, many rediscovered their public service calling. The fifth lesson cut deepest. When systems falter, solidarity is survival. Long after Mitchell's exit, staff texts lit up with scales and raised fists, symbols of a quiet pact crossing party lines. A Republican caseworker shared Harper's closing, "It's an oath," with her office, adding, "Let's uphold it before we're forced." Democratic interns replied with bipartisan language for the Integrity Act. They'd clash politically tomorrow, but tonight, they saw a shared foe. Leaders betting voters' trust on personal shows. Desks turned to strategy hubs. Coffee machines became war rooms. Harper's confronted injustice, once abstract, now sat urgent in every inbox. Staff knew reform wouldn't come from above. It would rise, document by document, from their cubicles. In that shared pulse, solidarity ousted cynicism, an unseen revolution of clipboard holders and badge scanners guarding the oath. The sixth lesson pulsed like an afterglow. Courage spreads. Harper's refusal of easy interviews showed bravery can be borrowed in small, enduring doses. A junior speechwriter rejected a dishonest line, citing Harper's example. A scheduler demanded an unscreened water safety question at a town hall, telling her boss, "If we can't face truth inside, it'll drag us outside." Capitol guides, usually neutral, added to tours, pointing to room 216. "Here, accountability outspoke power yesterday." Visitors leaned over ropes, some clapping softly. No reprimands came. Administrators felt the shift and let it flow. Hallway veterans whispered this energy hadn't stirred since civil rights or war votes. Courage, they found, infects when someone breathes it into stale air. The seventh lesson simmered beneath all. The narrative is the battlefield, and its teller shapes who heals. CNN later framed the student stream as a grassroots coup. Networks raced to catch up, but the story was already owned by those who lived it. Staffers, once silent props in congressional theater, posted trending threads by dawn. Accounts from copy rooms, stenography pools, cafeteria lines. Their view showed what pundits missed. Corruption's trickle into unpaid overtime, cut benefits, the size of unseen labor. They seized authorship, turning injustice from scandal to daily truth. Their truth became armor against gaslighting, a signal for allies, a record for future historians. Once they began telling it, they swore never to yield it. The 8th lesson dawned. Policy is the goal, but culture drives it. Ethics bill drafts flew fast, but staff knew paper alone would stall without cultural change. So they met in secret groups, Republicans, Democrats, rewriting manuals, setting blind expense checks, rotating signature power to block hidden misuse. T patched financial software gaps, training planned whistleblower workshops. It was tedious, granular, urgent, thrilling. They felt culture's gears turn toward honesty. Harper's fight, battling spectacle to uphold the oath, proved systems can't depend on heroes. They must be built, so heroism isn't the only shield. In that work, staffers found purpose beyond elections. And purpose, once tasted, is hard to let go. The 9th lesson lingered like dawn's hush. Justice needs unseen guardians, never thanked on air. They'd seen a representative skip a major news platform for a few students. It reminded every aide, driver, guard their off-frame role could pivot truth when lights blazed hottest. A custodian, sweeping steps at dawn, watched the flag rise and whispered, "It's our house, too." That truth, humble, vast, settled like dew. They saw injustice thrives on apathy, but fades under quiet vigilance. Silently, they chose watchfulness, vowing no backstage would shield the next public service turned cabaret. Emily Harper's stand taught the fiercest truth. The oath belongs to all under its roof. Staff knew they were its first and final defenders. So when dawn broke over the Capitol, the flag catching early light wasn't just cloth in wind. It reminded everyone, sweeping halls, drafting memos, that integrity is a living vow, kept not by speeches, but by ordinary hands refusing to let it fall. If hallway sweepers could guard the oath, what of us, watching from screens, keyboards, locked doors? What happens when truth's echo reaches not just the chamber, but the nation it serves? What now, with silence broken and lies bare? This isn't time to swipe past. It's not for applause without action. Emily Harper didn't unravel corruption's culture for us to admire ruins. She didn't ask one piercing question for us to treat politics as theater again. That hearing wasn't a show. It was a wake-up call. And it's ringing for you. You saw the cost, evidence, solitude, restraint to stand firm against smirks, spin, sabotage. Harper faced it, not for fame, but because truth needs a voice, backed by proof. If she stood alone so we wouldn't, it's time to respond. This is your moment. Call your representative. Ask their stance on the Integrity Act. Ask if leadership is privilege or duty. Demand town halls, oversight. Don't accept words. Seek votes, policies, audits. Ask who audits them. The hearing's done, but its exposed culture lingers. Power doesn't reform without pressure. You are that pressure. That voice saying representation isn't drama, it's sworn service. We're done cheering liars who grin on cue. Students, organize. Teachers, teach this moment. Don't let it fade to a viral blip. Let it live in community meetings, school board races, your calls, votes, choices. If you've been told to hush, that it's not your fight, recall what Emily showed. Silence isn't safety. It's complicity. She rose not by pleasing, but by being undeniable. Be undeniable too. Next time a public servant turns office into a circus, or signs lies blaming the pen, say you did more than watch. Say, I stood, voted, organized, acted. If enough do, no hearing like this will be needed. The standard will shift, not by order, but by demand. The question isn't what Emily Harper does next. It's, what will you do? Democracy isn't for marble room whisperers. It's for those who answer when silence calls. Thank you for staying until now, standing with us for justice. Your support is everything. Like subscribe, turn on notifications to catch what's next. Share your thoughts. Comment what stirred you most. Together, our voices matter.